This video is going to cover what damage combos each tank has that gives you the fastest possible time to kill inside Marvel Rivals. Starting off with Venom first, we're using his main primary attack and we're calculating the time to kill for this. As you can see, we're trying our best to not land any critical hits because you can definitely do it by mistake with Venom. Then we're taking a look at solely critical hits as well to see how quick this kills. Then we're using his corrosion attack plus the primary attack at the same time for the base damage, and then we also do it for critical hits as well because also that's very important, especially for Venom since he's the only Vanguard that can critical hit in this game. We also wanted to factor in doing a melee as well with Venom because I know a lot of people tend to mix that in with his primary attack, and we just kind of aimed for center mass with this one. And then we also did his frenzied arrival with his primary attack for the base attack, and then we also tested that frenzied arrival once more with his center mass melee attack as well, because this is how most people actually use Venom, and they mainly aim for center mass and they get some critical hits in there as well. Getting on into the numbers themselves now, the ones I want you to focus on is his primary attack for base and critical hits. The reason for that is because 9.39 seconds if you land no critical hits is actually pretty decent still, and then also of course if you do land some, it's going to bring your time to kill down significantly. Also, I do want to mention that the frenzied arrival is also important because you initiate most of your fights with this as Venom because it's your dive attack. So that's something that's very important. If you do aim for center mass though, you will get some critical hits, so that's definitely going to help out a ton. But using that melee attack in between this is not really helping you out that much. So even though people tend to do this, I don't think it's actually giving you any sort of benefit meleeing, so you might as well just use the primary attack. Next up, we've got the Hulk, and we're only taking a look at Hero Hulk because obviously the ultimate version of Hulk is an ultimate, and we're just using his standard attack here, which is the heavy blow, and we get some decent numbers actually with this. Then we use the stun ability that he has, which obviously doesn't deal too much extra damage, but there's also another issue with this as well that we'll go on to talk about in just a moment. But we're also then comboing that with heavy blow. Then we're using the gamma attack, which is his ranged attack, and then also with heavy blow as well to finish the enemy off, because by the time you've regenerated the gamma attack again, you've basically finished them off with melee in the first place. Then we're getting into the actual numbers now, and what I want to mention is with the heavy blow, it's decent numbers by itself. Using the gamma attack, you could probably get 2 gamma attacks in there if you really tried your best, or if the enemy was moving away from you, so you could get this number down slightly. And then when it comes to the lockdown, because of the animation time, it actually is slightly longer than using just the standard attack. So I wouldn't recommend this whatsoever unless obviously you're trying to stun an enemy, and that's kind of the main use of this. But to do extra damage, it's not really helping that much at all. Next up, we've got another easy one with Doctor Strange. We're using the Daggers of Denak. We're going to calculate the numbers for this by itself because he doesn't have too many combos anyway. And then what we also do is use the Maelstrom of Madness, and we also combo that with the daggers as well, and you only get 1 Maelstrom of Madness taking out Groot. Getting on into the actual numbers now, when it comes to the daggers themselves, they actually output a reasonable amount of damage, to be perfectly honest. 10.16 seconds to kill Groot is actually not too bad at all. Then if you do use the Maelstrom of Madness with the daggers, you actually do get this number down significantly, so you want to make sure you use that as much as you possibly can, pretty much when you're trying to kill any enemy, but especially the high HP tanks. Next up, we've got a more complex one in Groot. We're just testing out his Vine Strikes to begin with. Obviously he has a reload in between this as well, so we're factoring all that in here with these numbers. Then we're using the Spore Bomb plus the Vine Strike to see kind of what numbers we get when we combine these 2 attacks together. Then the other one we want to use is his Thorn Wall, and we're using 1 Thorn Wall plus the Vine Strikes to see what kind of damage numbers we get there. And then we use 2 Thorn Walls, and then again we test this with 3 Thorn Walls as well. Then we test it with the 3 Thorn Walls, the Spore Bomb, and the Vine Strike, and then we also test it with melee as well. So once you run out of your Vine Strikes, we just basically finish them off with melee attacks, so we don't need to do the reload animation to see if this gives you any quicker time to kill numbers. Getting into Groot's numbers now, I want you to focus on a couple here. So the main ones are the Spore Bomb plus the Vine Strike, which is a very easy combo to do. Then I also want to focus on 1 Thorn Wall only with the Vine Strike, and the reason why I'm saying that is because the jump from just a Vine Strike to adding 1 Thorn Wall you're actually reducing your time to kill significantly. Now, obviously between 1, 2, and 3 Thorn Walls, you're basically knocking off about a second here and there. And then obviously the 3 Thorn Walls does kill ridiculously quick, but obviously there's not always going to be 3 Thorn Walls available to you to use, plus planting them down takes a little bit of time as well, so we never really factored that in there. So like I said, the 1 Thorn Wall I actually think is good enough. Next up, we've got Captain America, and we did the standard strikes by themselves, but we also tried to animation cancel this as well, because a lot of the pro players are using a Captain America animation cancel. Now this is not super consistent all the time, so we had to record this a couple of times to try and get the best accurate combination, so it's not always very consistent, so please keep that in mind. It does knock off a couple of seconds though. Then we did the slam plus the animation cancelled strikes, which is the one where you jump into the ground and dive on the enemy. Then we also did the saw plus a couple of the animation strikes until obviously we killed Groot and got the final time to kill number. And then we also did the dash as well, the kind of rush, what it's called, and again with the animation cancelled strikes as well, to see what the numbers would be for that. Then we also changed every single one of these together to try and see if that gives you any faster time to kill numbers. So basically this is every one of his attacks that he has available to him. Getting into Captain America's numbers now, the 2 I want you to focus on is the Sentinel Strike animation cancel and also the Slam Strike. This is also including the animation cancel as well. So when you're animation cancelling, you're knocking off about a second in total, which is pretty decent, but it's not a game changer in my opinion. So if you can't do this, I wouldn't beat yourself up about it too much, to be honest. It's only what the high level players are doing to basically min-max as much as they can. When it comes to the Slam Strike, that is important though, because you are going to initiate every single one of your fights with a slam of some kind to basically dive into the enemies. So that is one I want you to focus on. Next up, we've got Magneto. Magneto's pretty straightforward. He only has 2 attacks. So the Iron Volley we did test, and basically he does have a couple of reloads in between this, which obviously we have factored in here. So as you can see, we factored in reloads, and then he also has the Mad Cannon, and the best way to use this is at the very end. Now this is not always going to be the case depending on the situation, but that is the best way and most optimal way to use this attack. Now when it comes to the actual numbers here, the Iron Volley is 10.39 seconds. With the Mag Cannon, it only knocks off 0.9 seconds, which is not anything too crazy. But what I would say is if you do have your teammates land that final blow after using the Mag Cannon in that combo, it does get it down to 18.13 seconds, or if the enemy is not at full HP, and keep in mind this is Groot we're talking about here, any other enemy would be dead by this point. Next up, we've got Thor, and with Thor we've got a lot of different combinations we can do, but first of all we're just doing his base attack, which is the Mjolnir Bash, and this is giving us some decent numbers just by itself, which is actually quite respectable. Then we're doing the charge up, but with no charge at all, but we keep using it in between after it replenishes down in the cooldowns, and just to see if this gives us any extra damage. Then we also did the exact same thing with the hammer throw, so every time it cooled down we threw a hammer as well, just to see how much extra damage we get with that. And then we also done the Awakening Rune with the Mjolnir Bash as well to finish off the enemy, and this one's probably the quickest. Then we had the full charge, and then we did Mjolnir Bash and hammer throws in between that every time it replenished. And then we did the full charge with the Mjolnir Bash and then the Awakening Rune at the end of this. And the reason why we did all these different combinations is because it depends on how you initiate with Thor. And the main ones I want you to focus on here are the Mjolnir Bash with the hammer throws mixed in, and that is if you're stood still attacking an enemy. This is pretty solid if you don't have all 3 hammers available. Then you also want to take a look at the Awakening Rune with the Mjolnir Bash as well, because this is going to give you some of the fastest killing potential in the entire game. And then also I want you to focus on the full charge with the Mjolnir Bash and the Awakening Rune all paired together, because this is some kind of initiation combo that you will be using. You'll be basically charging into the enemy at full charge, then using a couple of bashes to get your last hammer, then you'll use the Awakening Rune to actually deal damage. Lastly, we have Penny Parker, and we're using her guns to start with, or cyber web cluster, whatever you want to call it. We've just done the base weapon by itself, and there's no critical hits on this one. Then we use the spider nest and also the web cluster, because the spider nest also does deal some kind of damage to the enemies. Then we also use the mines in between firing the guns as well to see how much damage we get with that too. And then we used all three combined together to see how quickly we can kill Groot. Taking a look at the actual numbers now, as you can see here, the main ones I want you to focus on is the cyber web cluster with the nest and with the mines. Now you could use all three together to get some insane time to kill numbers, but to be honest with you, there's probably not going to always be a time when you have all three available. So even when you have two of these available, it's worth using the mines to even attack the enemy you're shooting at. I think it actually works really well. And then the spider nest is just what you need to be using constantly with Penny Parker. Otherwise, the numbers still look pretty decent, but if you miss any shots, obviously it's not going to work out so well. Getting on into the comparison section of this video, and we're going to be taking a look at all these numbers and which heroes output the most damage for the least effort. I think that's really something important that I need to mention. Now, when it comes to Venom, for example, you need to be landing critical hits to actually get his numbers down to a kind of 5 to 6 second time to kill. So I do think it's a bit harder to do with Venom than some other heroes like Doctor Strange, for example, where his Maelstrom of Madness is very easy. It charges up as you do damage, you just release it, that's it, done. You don't need aim or anything like that. Also, when it comes to Groot, as long as you use one Thorn Wall, which you probably have 90% of the time anyway, and you place it down near the enemy you're trying to fight, and you're going to be dealing tons of damage. You're basically outputting the fastest amount of damage possible, even with one wall with Groot. So even if you have 2 or 3, ridiculously fast, but 1 is enough. Then we have Thor with his Awakening Rune, which, as long as you obviously have your 3 hammers available, you're going to be outputting tons of damage with Thor very easily. As the activation of one button, you just do it. And then when it comes to Penny Parker, as long as you have the spider nest down, you're dealing a good amount of damage as well. And to be honest, it's a set it and forget it kind of thing. And if anyone comes in the range of your spider nest, which is quite big, you're going to be dealing some extra damage there. So those are the heroes I would recommend. So Penny Parker, Thor, Groot, and Doctor Strange. There we have it. That is all the time to kill numbers for all the combos. When it comes to the tanks and Marvel Rivals, we will be making a video on the DPS heroes very soon. We've also made our video already on the strategist, and if you do want to compare these numbers against what is on the website, we've also made a video doing that as well, where we calculated all the numbers from the website just to double check and cross-reference what we've done here today. So if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe, and thank you very much for watching.